some tables together, so we've got some. You're going to have to do a bit of work, guys. I apologize in advance. You're going to have to do a bit of work. So let's maybe just get to kind of 5 to 6 per table. Should make us a nice little cohort, maybe.
The tables where you'll see 2 of these on the tables are generally on the tables here. So these are your 2 worksheets across these sort of 9 to 10 12.
Make some new friends. Connect with somebody you haven't spoken to yet. I've heard there's a lot of new faces in the room. All right. Okay, everybody, let's get very basic. Does everybody know everybody else? It sounds like there's new people. Make sure you introduce yourselves. So today's plan. We're going to cover 3 things today. First one, innovation. Second one, vision, and the third one, application. Okay. We'll get to the kind of the working part of the session shortly. Firstly, just wanted to introduce, I mentioned earlier, John Persico. So John's the co-founder of a company called Teck College. Australian, we won't hold that against him too much, and heavily involved in the kind of the digital technology and sports tech space globally. John, do you just want to give us a quick Teck College, 2 minutes?
Yeah, so we do a lot of stuff around teaching kids in high schools. Sports tech, so there's 30 schools in Australia where kids between the ages of 10 and 16 are learning about the future of sport, entertainment and gaming, so which is a little bit scary. And so it's mandatory in a lot of these schools where they basically get, the teachers get a 600-page curriculum and they learning plans, activity things about building their own stadiums, running their own leagues, how to understand fantasy sports. So these kids are very digital. It's a digital first program designed for kids at schools. So we're pretty passionate about rolling this out. We're focusing on Australia, obviously first, and New Zealand soon as well. But the opportunity to get that next generation engaged in learning them digital first solutions. And it's obviously we had a lot of success in Melbourne and I was in Victoria and Queensland, obviously with the Olympics, and I've been heavily involved with over the past 3 or 4 years. But it's a pleasure to be here and thanks for having me.
Awesome. So John's other little side is he's got probably the world's best spreadsheet of sports tech companies. Yeah. So when we get to the how part of this conversation, there's some very specific examples we can start to bring to life as well. So just as a very brief recap, we covered 5 kind of macro trends. These are going to be really important for the remainder of this conversation. So the shifting demographics, tightening spending environment, changing consumer expectations, changing geopolitics, and emerging technologies are really the big kind of trends, and we'll get to how we're going to apply those shortly. Again, to reiterate the point, productivity or performance, these are your 2 metrics for technology. And there's 5 kind of broad categories, okay, that we want to think about applying. So what we're going to do specifically, there's a worksheet on your table, which is a modified version of what's known as a trends canvas. And one of the big things that we see globally all the time is a real challenge in translating vision to execution. Yeah? Translating what we all know as the things that we should be doing into actually how do we do it. Yeah? We think that a big part of that is a misunderstanding of the problem and a lack of clarity around what we're trying to achieve and why. Yeah? So we're going to do a bit of a facilitated session. You're going to have to do a little bit of work today. So I hope everybody's got a pen. The placemats on your table have 2 sides. One side has a blank circle in the trend, and the other side has a filled-in circle. So you can choose if you want to take a crack at something that's not something different as far as a big broad macro trend. you can. Otherwise, the trends in the table are the ones that we're going to be looking at today. So we're going to cover initially around the vision. Yeah? What is happening? What are the different elements? There we go. Let's fill that whole thing in shifting demographics, just as one example. Yeah? What's an inspiration? Who are some organizations you've seen that are doing something about this? What are they doing? What are they doing differently? Why is it successful, or why do you think it's being successful? What are the needs that are being met? What's really driving the change? And what's the expectations of the people who are being affected by this? Yeah? And then who? Who else needs to be involved? Who needs to take part in this ecosystem? And from there, we're then going to jump into the actual application of technology. Okay? So this is the what and the why conversation, and then we're going to jump into the how in terms of application of that technology and specific problems that we might aim to solve. So the way we're going to do this, each table, Teck and myself and John will be floating around. Each table will get I've set a timer for it'll be about sort of 8 minutes-ish, and then we're going to have to try and tackle this first side of the page, right, around what are the things we're seeing in the world that we think are going to impact the sector, what's inspiring us, and then we're going to jump into some very specific examples for application of technology to try and solve those problems. Yeah? Again, remembering that technology in the context that we're talking about it is a tool. Technology is a means to an outcome. It's a means to solve a problem, but it shouldn't be leading the conversation, so to speak. Okay? So we're going to set a timer. We're going to then choose a couple of tables to play back their inspiration, their trends, their kind of findings, and then we're going to go into some very specific application of some of those problems. Does that make sense? No resounding disagreement? Very good. Hello, yes. No. So on the table, you should have, if I printed them correctly, there's different sheets. Everybody should have a different trend. Nothing on that table. All right, we can deliver that. Okay. You can deliver that one as well. All right, excellent. It's just those pages there. So there should be five trends spread around the room. No, the other side. So there's one page. One side of the page is blank, and one side of the page has a trend already on it. So if you can't see a trend, turn it over. It's probably the moral of the story. Take two. Yeah. No worries. Okay. So we're just focusing on the vision. We're just focusing on the left-hand side of the page. Time's on. All right, how are we getting on? Progress? Feeling okay? People still talking. This is good. Okay. Well, a little bit more time. A little bit? Sure, can. All right, 2 minutes. Time's on. Okay. How's everybody getting on? Gonna call on a few volunteers here. Anybody like to share their kind of initial take on vision and some of the inspiration, some of their kind of sense of these topics? Any volunteers? I'm going to pick on the table that's written the most. What do you reckon, Brent? You can probably open us up.
Oh, who knows? We had the changing geopolitical environment, so sort of some of the basic needs we were thinking about here are sort of less money obviously being there, but sort of being a bit glass half full in terms of the opportunity the geopolitical environment plays. So our friends at Rugby League here looking at sort of hosting test matches in Samoa in terms of sort of other sort of geopolitical responsibilities. In terms of inspiration, people are doing sort of sport piece well out sort of the Saudis, China, even New Zealand in terms of over the last couple of years hosting 3 Women's World Cups using events in terms of building and galvanising a nation. Geopolitically, in terms of looking at some of the drivers of change, both long-term and short-term, is long-term sort of the increased cost of living that's been placed on communities and whānau and the likes as well, is that driving increased sedentary lifestyles. Consumers in whānau are having to make choices maybe that they haven't had to make in the past. The changing environmental landscape as well in terms of turfs and access to facilities, climate, changing diversity of our communities, changing demos, that's all sort of driving stuff as well. Some short-term things, obviously we've got a new government, politics, changes in policy. From a geopolitical standpoint as well, we know this current government is looking at sort of increasing the focus on numeracy and literacy in schools. What impact does that have on PE and exposure to kind of opportunities to be active within the school environment? So yeah, just a bit of a riff and a bit of a freestyle around sort of the landscape, what's happening, who's doing it well, and things that we need to be mindful of.
Fantastic. Okay. Anybody else? Julie, you got anything on? You got a team?
We talked about the shifting demographics and particularly wanted to hone in on the drop-off in participation in society. So we're talking about teenagers and we talked a bit about teenagers dropping out of traditional participation in sport. We talked a bit about some of the drivers around that. A couple of them being that our traditional sports system, while kids might come in really young in modified formats of the game, they get driven towards the full format, full noise, like quite a lot of commitment around the actual participation. So that could be one kind of barrier. And also there was a sense that schools are starting to opt out of sports that are offered in club environment. So where the participation could have happened in the past, that's not being offered. And then if you think about that full format again, it relies on cohort of volunteers, so parents available to help make things happen. So those were all of the sort of issues that we considered around that drop-off. Some inspirations about the future that we thought about. We understand that at AGS they've now brought back like lunchtime offerings for sport coupled with the phone ban, so sort of taking away one barrier and providing another solution, which is we sort of saw the emerging expectations around bite-sized participation, making it really easy, the transport logistics, kids don't want to get on buses for half an hour to go do sport, how much time is going to be taken up, things like that. So drivers have changed. Yeah, we thought it was around people wanting that kind of shorter format, not everybody wanting that full-on competitive environment, kids being worried about whether their friends would think something was cool or not, phone time. So those were all sort of the drivers that need to be addressed. And so in terms of that, who needs to be involved in the solution, we felt that the school environment was one that was really critical for rangatahi, and from the sports bodies, that for us we could help to play a role in solutions around that bite-sized format and creating ways that it's much more of a like have a go option. So you don't have to do the full cross-country course, you can maybe just have a go and walk out and back, or just going from a very sort of rigid, I guess, approach to it to something more bite-sized and fun, and also can be maybe, on terms for the kids to invent themselves to some degree.
Cool.
That was our conversation.
Fantastic. So geopolitics and the role of kind of the changing world, consumer expectations. Let's do one more. Maybe we'll come over here to this table. You guys look like you've made a good crack.
Hello everyone, I'm Paul from Wellington City Council. We did economic available funding, some of the expectations around less money to go around, people are wanting a seamless customer experience, the high cost of capital, high inflation, cost of compliance, growing expectations on level of service, and people just want transparency around what they pay. In terms of who's an inspiration, we thought some commercial providers do probably a better way of delivering services. We did discuss the fitness industry, but I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that this afternoon and some of their challenges. Someone mentioned virtual fitness, and I think some emerging sports do pretty well in terms of building new customer bases and probably delivering at a lower cost. I think some of the drivers for change is that aging condition of some assets that we all rely on, that high cost of assets today, and more demand on that funding dollar. Someone mentioned at the table, we've now got 40 sanctioned sports in secondary schools, so we're catering for much sort of a wider base of sport we're supporting. Some of those changes are volunteer time, people who are prepared to give their time. A lot of people are prepared to pay, so there is quite a user pay market. Changing political priorities, and also many of our councils these days aren't that wedded to using Class 4 funding, so the funding models we've got to support sport. So a changing political landscape, who can help us, or I think we've all got the same problem, whether we're a provider or a funder, but we really probably need a bit more joined up thinking and leadership from the sector, need much better data to inform and prioritise those investment decisions, and all of us have a myriad of systems and processes and models. I think particularly in local government, we did a bit of review in our area regionally around sports. I think there's 300 different types of fees across 5 councils that we're charging the sports that we support. That's probably me.
Cool.
Anyone got anything else?
Okay, excellent, excellent. So some good examples there. So let's change gears a bit. We've got an idea of the problem. We've got an idea of what we're trying to solve. We've got an idea of what's driving that change in behaviour. So let's move into application. So I'm going to pull up the sort of the indicative group of technologies that we previously talked about. Yeah, we're going to do a slightly shorter exercise. Given what we know, given what we've learned, given what you know so far, where do you think technology could help you meet those changing expectations? Where do you think technology could influence? You know, what would you like technology to be able to do? And what's preventing you from doing that today? Yeah. What's the barrier that you have today around? Could be operating model, could be funding, partnerships, your organisation. There's a series of them. But the big point is to now we have an understanding of aspiration, an understanding of vision, an understanding of the problem we're trying to solve. What is potentially the role of technology in helping us solve that? So I'm going to pull up that sort of very basic overview of different types of technology. If everybody's unsure about what some of those technologies are, or you're more than welcome to use any other relevant examples that you've seen of different types of technology. But the key question is, where do you think technology could help you to meet this change? You know, what would have the most impact based on what you know today, and what would you try and, you know, what's the problem or what's the function that that technology could serve in solving that problem, and then specifically what barriers. We'll then jump into some very explicit examples about types of technology to address some of the more common challenges. Okay, so I'm going to pull up this this list. So there's some examples of different technology by different types of category. Some of these would be cutting across lots of trends. Some of these might be cutting across, you know, more specific to single problems, consumer expectations, and you know, the role of esports, the role of virtual sport, for example. So we're going to do a very quick sort of 5-ish minute exercise on what do you think technology could help you achieve? What technology would help you sort of address the drivers and the behaviour change that you're seeing? And then what's stopping you from doing that today? What would you like to see, and what's stopping you from doing that today? Okay? Make sense? A resounding disagreement? Good. All right. Great. How's everybody getting on? We need some more time. We're happy. Ready to do ready to share something, share some ideas before we wrap it all up. Still busy talking. That's good. No, it's okay. Okay, let's bring it back together. Hopefully, that little process there triggered some ideas, triggered potentially some collaborations in the room, potentially some new things that we might want to look at. Anybody would like to give us a bit of a sense of where they landed on different technology that might be able to help them to deliver services, and what the main barriers are to that today. Any volunteers? I'm going to pick people again, so you can volunteer or get picked. Probably a different table this time. Hands up over there. Very good.
So at our table, we talked in terms of the context of sort of community sport and how technology can help. We talked about the value of having really fit-for-purpose membership and competition management systems where it provided that integration, provides that value, provides that sort of transparency for people about what are they paying for. But what's also important on top of that is having the sort of data and insights tools that can then help you understand what's the quality that you're delivering for your participants through technology solutions, and also enable you to tell the story to help project outside of your sport opportunities for investment, either commercial or with government agencies or with other not-for-profits.
Sure.
We often talk about sport has social value, but we probably really struggle to tell that story about what that social value is, and so how can technology help us bring those stories out of our sort of participants' experiences every weekend through what it does at the club or whatever the case may be, and then use that as part of our storytelling.
Sure, fantastic. And I mean, what's stopping you doing that today? What's the barrier? Sounds. I mean, yeah. I agree.
Well, investment in these things is challenging.
Yep.
So we've got to look
funding.
at funding.
Yep.
Whether or not we're really got enough collaborative spirit going through the sector itself to work together.
Sure.
So partnerships. Rugby's currently moving to a new service next year. We've done a collaboration with Rugby Australia, who've got the same issues, so we're working with them.
Sure.
But across the sector, what is the opportunities for sports to work together to try and get that cost down and maximise the value?
Sure, fantastic. Okay, great use case. Down the back. Thanks, John.
Kia ora. We ended up talking a little bit about, we've got Scouts and Girl Guides here, and
Cool.
We were talking a little bit about, it's obviously been a really physically based in-person experience and the ability to use gamification and AR. So starting with things like you might have an AR, but like the Pokemon Go, that's been really successful, getting people out exploring. Then you might do gamification where there's an online community. We could do things like, you have to progress through a little world and identify mushrooms that are safe to eat, or, build your own bivouac or things like that. But also looking at how using things like, looking at examples of things like Zwift and, what was the other one we had? There's online, Fortnite as an example, where you've got the opportunity to have online communities and connection, but you can choose whether you want to participate or not. Zwift, obviously, you can just tortle around on a course that looks pretty, or you can meet up with people and actually race. So being able to let people participate at a level that's comfortable. The thing for us is with that age group is then they don't tend to have their own device being under 12, so how you can safely manage that. So there's the parent lens in terms of, but also then an opportunity around family connection and conversations. Barriers, same, funding, there's an expertise that is, and we've come to your conversation earlier this morning, that digital app builders and tech people aren't normally ones you find in sports organisations who are running on the smell of an oily rag. But the benefits a lot around data insights, upskilling, building communities, and the other one for me is climate change. We looked at pandemic, cyclone, that really isolated a lot of people, and obviously once technology comes back online, being able to reconnect people with their community even if it's remotely over something that they love, until they can get back out and do it in person.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. One more, and then we'll jump into some sort of specific examples of kind of organisations in this space. Any other volunteers? How technology might help you address some of the changing behaviour that you've seen over here? Sorry, we'll bring the microphone over. Here you go. Oh, yep, there we go. It's already over there. Very good.
Am I turned on? Yes.
Yes. Okay. We're done? Yeah, we're done. So it's chocolate outside.
Okay, our focus was on tightening spending in the environment, and we've got an interesting mix of councils, sports, and Sport NZ around the table. Our real thinking is that we have to find localised solutions that are community enabled, and so we need technology that enables a kind of crowdsourced marketplace of opportunities that leverages a kind of social awareness and incentivisation, and that is able to use data to help inform that process. The three key things that we think are stopping this are who will be the facilitator of this, keeping it alive, active and relevant. What is the platform that we might use that would have the opportunities that we'd be looking for? And who might we leverage off as partners or collaborators? Thank you.
Fantastic. Excellent. Okay, three really interesting examples there. So I'm just going to give John sort of 5 minutes to just give us a bit of a flavour of the types of organisations actually delivering services in these spaces for us to think about, for us to talk about. Yeah, and then we're going to do a quick wrap up on key takeaways. I've been informed there's a refreshed chocolate bar outside to get everybody fired up for the afternoon. So we'll wrap up about 5 minutes to, and then the next session's in here at 2 o'clock. So, John, just very briefly on sort of each of these categories, how do you sort of see the world?
There's a lot of really interesting things that are coming next, right? So I'll give you an example. There's a company like AI Scout in a UK-based company, right? They're raising 40 odd million at the moment. These guys basically have created a lab to do talent ID. And when you say talent ID, it's better than any organisation here could do. Like, they've actually got a world-class lab, better than any country could perform, and they do it it's like a caravan, right? And they work together with Chelsea Football Club. Like, they're working with the IOC, they're working with MLS Soccer, but they do it in a mobile van. Frightening. The world's best technology in a van, right? I think the world of scouting and talent ID it's $1 trillion market. It's going to be rocked, right? I think things like coaching intelligence, right? How can Sport New Zealand play a role in the next generation of digital tools that enhance how, and there are companies that are starting to do that, right? Did you see that Google released a AI football thing for corner kicks, right? What was really fascinating is that 90% of coaches and players trusted Google over their coach. Think about that one tonight. AI, everyone talks about AI. AI helps, if you're going to learn anything, like one thing about AI here, AI helps with three things, right? How do you personalize something? How do you automate something? And how do you create something? If it can't do those three things, it's probably not for you, right? So it's just a really good tool to think about. I think the role of governments in playing a role in centralised health systems is really, really interesting. There hasn't been a discussion yet today around fantasy sport, right? Do you know the biggest sports tech company in the world, who it is? Who is it? Stream 11, Indian company, right? Their valuation, a fantasy sport company, I think they're valued over $10 billion at the moment, right? There are fantasies. You say, well, what's fantasy sport? We don't do fantasy sport, right? That's how the kids are relating to sport, And the Rugby World Cup was wildly successful, and all the different things. So the conceptualisation of how you what needs to be thought about here is this environment, creating this safe environment for the intersection between not just sport, but it's entertainment on one hand, and it's also gaming kind of goes next door, right? And that whole framework and that patchwork about how you identify with yourself is really, really interesting. Another thing as well is like you look at things like, you know, how you provide NFTs and digital tokenization, right? So I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, right? And when we were all playing sport, did anyone ever record a game of you playing sport? Put your hand up if your mum and dad or grandma ever recorded you playing sport. Oh, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's a handful. And wouldn't you love to record all sport, you know, for your kids and your nephews and nieces and grandkids, right? Wouldn't you love to record it all? Would it be great? Would you love to own that moment when they score their 7th goal in the under-8s, you know? Would you love to own that moment? You know, specifically that moment, and treasure, you could give it to them, they're 21, to say, that was you had 7 goals in that game, you played fantastic, right? It was a great moment. That's possible. That's possible now, right? And this is what's happening, right? You've got people who identify themselves as, you know, I'll give you a great example. You've got tools coming out of the US and out of the UK and wherever else. Instead of dealing with like who works in media and broadcast here and digital related things on a day-to-day basis, put your hands up if you work in that kind of role. Like in a digital role, digital first, no one? But now you've got tools, right, which is really cool. Instead of dealing with 130 different vendors, you can deal with one. You go one login and you access 130 different tools. Novak Djokovic has invested in it, right? So you see what I mean? Like there's this wonderful array of technologies that are starting to emerge, but if you don't get clear on what you're trying to solve, then it's really, really difficult. I think when you look at CRM and membership, and you look at things like loyalty and gamification and things like this, you need to fundamentally understand what you're trying to do, and also the sphere within which you're working, right? I'll give you another example, right? So smart seating. Like, how many times have you been to a sporting game, and then you're watching an elite sporting game, and this idea of microtransactions, right? And your favourite player just kicked a goal, and you're there with your little niece or nephew, and you go, I would love to just have, you know, we were talking about the volleyball yesterday, right? We were talking about volleyball, an Australian team just made the Olympics, right? Wouldn't that be a moment if you were there, you would just love to have just gone and had a cuddle or a photo or something, and just go, that was just an amazing moment for sport. You happened to be at the qualifier game, right? But if it was a New Zealand one. But the point being, you could have bought a micro moment of a transaction to say, I'll pay $50 for a photo after the game. That's just awesome, right? I just remember it was a moment in history that I just was there, my partner was there, the players were there, they just qualified the Olympics, I just saw exuberation, and it was awesome. You know? And I paid $50 for it because it was awesome. The sport just monetised that, you know? So it's a new platform, and I think that thinking about even the booking, and also thinking about the role of government and the role of where, as the quantified self becomes possible, right? They can measure stress, they can measure behaviours, they can measure emotions increasingly. All these things are becoming possible. Where do you want to play? There's no right or wrong answer. But do you want to know when I go to the gym? Do you want to know when I go on a fun run? Do you want to know that I'm having a bad day? Something like that. Does the government want to know that role and the health data that goes with it, recreational data that goes with it? What happens if you put all the data in one place? You know? Can you like use, you know, blockchain, and can you use tools to be able, smart contracts to be able to monetize this? What happens to all the videos when you put all the videos together? Can you start to see trends and things like that you've never seen before? Data is the unspoken language and tool here, and I think that there's some really interesting questions, but it's not always. I'll just leave you with one thing. Like, I remember when, you know, if you know that something's coming towards you, the average people will kind of like, if you knew a ball was coming at you at, you know, 80 kilometres an hour, the natural reaction of people is to kind of take a step back, right? It's actually just go like this. Like if it was a volleyball, they take a step back and go, you're hitting a ball really hard at me, I'm scared, right? But once they've done it about 50 times, you start to realise I could probably take a step forward here and anticipate this, right? It's coming, we know, it's positive, right? And As long as we've got guardrails, as long as we've got a safe sandpit to do things, it's going to be cool, right? And it's failing's okay. And I think it's that play-based, fun-based thing that'll be my encouragement today, to have a think about how do you make this fun? How do you make this enjoyable? And creating a safe environment to make little... You don't see kids, when they fall over, they just get up. It's okay, it's not the end of the world. And I think sometimes as adults, we take things a little bit too seriously. And especially when we're talking about data, digital tech. I know there are some serious issues, but also I think we can enjoy the experience.
Thanks, John. So anybody who would like hey, what are the 5 big emerging technologies for this specific problem? John's your man. Like I said, he's got a massive spreadsheet and an online education platform to get very specific about the technology itself. Yeah. 3 key things to leave you with off the back of this conversation. Number 1, that framework there, very simple, very simplified tool to help translate what you would probably term your executive aspiration into something that you can actually then take to a technology conversation. Number 2, obviously, devil's going to be in the detail, but a clear vision and measurable objectives, what you're trying to achieve, will absolutely set the tone for any investment in this space. Digital is inherently collaborative, right? The nature of the world has become collaborative, partnership-driven. Seek out high-quality, high-impact partners, whether that's technology companies, whether that's other NSOs, other RSTs. Collaborate in a meaningful way, because you can collaborate cheaply and quickly in this environment, and test and learn, and make some observations. That's just about to time. So anybody who's kind of completed most of their sheet, what we're planning to do is take these away and come back with a couple of little insights, little answers, little companies, interesting case studies, things based on what you've identified. Okay. So if you would like us to come back to you, just jot your some details down on the paper, and we'll come back with a little case maybe on somebody who's done this somewhere else, or somebody who's failed at doing this somewhere else as a lesson to learn. So jot that down, leave it on the table. We will whistle around and collect them. In fact, probably easier because there's going to be people coming in. So probably easier if you write it down and then just bring it up before you go and have your chocky outside. And 39 seconds to go. We're
well done.
We're done.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so just, if everyone could just put your hands together for the Portas crew, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brent.
Like I say, I know for me, when I'm sort of starting to dip my toe in this technology sort of ecosystem, the first place that you generally go is to the technology. So I really appreciated the process that we went through today. Start really macro, get really, really clear on sort of the problem, the vision that you have, and then sort of work towards the technology solution. The guys are going to be with us tonight and over the next 2 days. So if you've got a question that you don't want to share with, in front of the group, feel free to pull them aside and lean into their wisdom. Thank you so much, guys. We've got a couple of minutes for the next one. Cheers.
Just on that, we are going to have a short break after our next keynote speaker, but you have been sitting in here for the last hour, so, stretch your legs for a couple of minutes, and then we'll get going back here as soon as. Kia ora.